Hey there! As we begin our topic into game development, it's important that we look at some video games and we learn a few terms. So we're going to start off by looking at this video game here. This is called Warframe, but other than playing it a little bit, our main focus is going to be looking at a few things. Now, before we get started, we need to establish a few terms. The first term is going to be genre. So this term genre is what is used, you may have heard this in a lot of different fields, and it works the same way in video games, is where you can categorize a type of video game altogether. So the genre of this type of game would be a third-person shooter. Third person because I can see my character walking around. A shooter, as you can probably tell by the big gun she's holding, the reticle in the middle of the screen, and down at the bottom the bullet count. The main purpose of this game is to shoot things. There are lots of different genres of video games. Of course, there's third and first person shooters, there's puzzle games, there's RPG experience games, RPG stands for role-playing games, there's boss battling games. There's a very wide set of genres of video games, but there's one thing that you'll find in every single game. Every single game follows a very specific structure of having these three things. It has a player, or some way of taking player input, be that my character right here, or your character in Minecraft, or whatever game. It could be the active Tetris block in Tetris that's coming down. Some way the game is taking your input, generally in the form of a player. There has to be some sort of goal for every game, and for this game here, you can see that in a couple of ways. This little gold icon up on the top top left on my minimap, as you see, it's called Captain Vor. That's a character that I need to kill in this game. You can also see a little arrow, and I'll turn towards it, showing me the direction I need to go, which is down this hole here, to get there. So there has to be some sort of goal, some reason for playing your game. Every single game has a goal. Shooters, shooting. Puzzle games, solving the puzzle for some reason. Even in sport, there is some sort of goal. Score, get the ball into the net, or whatever it may be. And the third thing that every single game has, a player, a goal, is obstacles. There has to be something making the goal difficult to obtain. Maybe not difficult, but not instantaneous. I shouldn't just be able to have Captain Vor appear in front of me and I just click a button and he dies. So there has to be some sort of obstacles. In this game, there are a couple. Of course, I need to get to my target. I see he's so many meters away. So there's traversal as an obstacle, and as you can probably expect, being a shooter game, there are enemies that are trying to shoot me as an obstacle. So those are the three things that every single game has: a player, a goal, and an obstacle, or obstacles, I should say. So those are universal. There's something that we can call conventions. Conventions are the way something is normally done. A conventional movie follows a three-stage structure. A conventional essay starts with an introduction, a series of paragraphs written in a statement, example, explanation structure, following with a conclusion. A conventional game has a few things that you would expect to see in a game. So let's talk about some things that we would expect to see in this genre of game. Now, some things that we can see straight off the bat on the screen, that are constantly on my screen, is things like my minimap, my health, and my bullets and abilities down the bottom. This screen that's always visible to me is called the UI, or user interface. And there are some things that I should be told as a player at just a glance. And that depends on your type of game. Conventionally, or normally, you'll be able to see in a shooter game the amount of bullets that you have. You notice that I went down from 6 to 5 bullets. You should be, and if I reload, it goes back up to 6, and the 72 changes to 71. The amount of bullets I have actively in my magazine, the amount of bullets I have in total. You'll notice as one of my obstacles is enemies trying to kill me, I'm told how much life and shielding, which is the blue number, I have available, which you can see up on the top right. Something that I can see at a glance. Very importantly, because I am shooting, there's a reticle, that little dot in the middle. If I change weapon, still there. And lastly, because I need to traverse this map, it's provided me with a mini-map that you can see up in the top left, showing me where to go. And of course my player's there so I can see them. So those are conventional UI elements, conventional user interface elements, things that I would expect to see in every type of game in this genre. So let's play a little bit. So, straight off the bat, I'm moving. Wow. Very expected. I should be able to move in a game, especially of this genre. And I should also be, if I can find someone, able to shoot, as it is a shooter game. Oh my god. Got him. You'll also notice that the pickups are glowing and various things like that. But we'll just focus on the basics for now. So, me moving around and shooting, I didn't really need a tutorial to do that, because it is the conventional way of doing that. You're using the WASD keys to move around, or the arrow keys if you would prefer. You're using the left mouse button to shoot, and it's shooting to wherever my reticle is currently pointing. And I'm using the right mouse button to zoom in. R to reload. Keys that I would expect to be able to do things. I can I can sprint by holding shift, I can jump by holding by pressing space. All of these keys are keys that I would expect to be able to do them, to do these functions, because they are the conventional keys, the normal keys to do these things. Alright, so what we'll find in our exercises is going to be listing a series of genres, game genres like first-person shooter or puzzle or third-person shooter or whatever it may be. And then it's going to ask you to look for the conventions of these games. This is talking about how things are normally done. What would you expect to be able to do in this game, and how would you expect to be able to do it? I would expect to be able to move by pressing the WASD keys. For a game where I need to traverse a lot of things like this, I would expect to be able to jump by pressing the space key. So these are all conventions. And then you'll also notice a little section called UI. What are the conventional UI elements or user interface elements? And we talked about those earlier. Minimaps, health, bullets. We'll look at a few different games from a couple of different genres as well, so that we can have a bit of a range. One key thing is that if your game does everything conventionally, it does everything that it needs to do, but just that, then it'll probably be forgotten. That's not something we want to worry about too much this year, but in the future, every game needs something to make it more interesting, something to make it really pop. This game has more interesting movements, with things like bullet jumps, more advanced abilities. It's got melee attacks, a large variety of things that aren't expected necessarily in the third-person shooter genre, but are added to make it a more interesting game. Now, let's jump into a different type of game, and we'll discuss a few different conventions that we see in there. Awesome, so this is a different genre of game, very similar but fundamentally different. We're going to notice conventions in here again, both in terms of gameplay and similarities there, and also in terms of UI. So let's start off with UI. So looking between this and Warframe, the game that we just saw, there's a few notable differences and similarities. Obvious difference is this is a first-person game in the sense that we can only see the gun and the hands of my character instead of my entire character themselves. This is to give a more immersive feel. The information on the screen is once again limited to the rim of the screen, and the only thing in the middle is my character, in this case the hands, and the reticle, but the information given is quite similar. This is a shooter. This is a game called Borderlands 3. It's focused primarily on what is called looter shooter, or killing things, getting better equipment. So that again involves a lot of exploration. So you see there is a mini-map provided. You see my current mission, similar to Warframe, the game we just saw, provided as well. And on my map there are clear icons showing various things, like my mission, that little diamond shape up there. You'll also notice, as this is a shooter game, I am displayed my health and shield, and in this game I even have a little pet called Killer, the guy in front of me. So his health is available. It's in a slightly different place, bottom left here. The other information shown to me is my level in the bottom center. This game has a big focus on leveling up and becoming stronger. And my gun type, the amount of bullets in it, and any abilities I have active. So, a lot of similarities in terms of the UI, the information told to me as a user, and you'll find similarities. Now in terms of gameplay, control-wise, WASD moves me around. The arrow keys no longer do. They instead perform emotes. So I can only use WASD to move in this game. Spacebar once again jumps. Shift once again sprints. Left click once again shoots. Right click once again zooms. Oops, right click, there we go. Once again, all of those same controls, or very similar controls to last time. Again, I have some sort of melee. Oh, maybe I don't have a melee with that key. I forget how to play this game. Somehow I have a melee as well. And a few things like that. Other similarities or conventions that I see is pickups are glowing or obvious to me. I can see this bullets right here in front of me and some money over there. Obvious based on the glowing lights coming out of them. Just like in Warframe, there were those glowing items around. And enemies are also marked on my minimap if I can get some around me. And we'll have a look up in the top right at the minimap. Sure, there's some right over here, if I remember this game correctly. So just like oh, there we go, those red dots represent enemies. So there's a couple coming at me here. Oh, missed it. There we go. Once again, reloads. Expected keys, or conventional keys. Keys that we would expect to do these jobs. Now let's have a look at a game at a completely different genre and see what similarities carry over there as well. Awesome, so this is a completely different genre of game. This is a 2D side-scrolling sort of RPG game. This game is called Hollow Knight, and the main objective is to take my little guy, who you can see in the center of the screen jumping around, throughout a variety of areas, defeating powerful enemies. and leveling up along the way, which is the role-playing aspect of it. So let's begin by looking at the UI, or user interface, and seeing what's stuck to my screen. Obviously I have my player in the center of the screen. I don't have any obvious objectives, unlike the other games here. I'll need to go searching for those in my notes and things like that, wherever that may be. Somewhere, maybe. So I don't have any obvious objectives, and I'll need to find that through progressing through the story, but things actually stuck to my screen is quite minimal in this case. I see up in the top left is the only thing stuck here. It's got 3 little face-looking things, which, at an estimation, I can guess are lives, and in this case they are lives. I can see 95 somethings, which actually represents currency in this game. Those little rock dollar things, and some sort of large circle, which is just completely empty at the moment. In terms of controls, once again I have those conventional WASD keys to move. The arrows do not move in this game, and left click does attacks, spacebar does jumps. So conventional keys. Oh, noticing that I took damage, the screen went black. It gave me a good visual and audio cue actually. It went dim, went quieter, and one of those little masks up the top has disappeared. Notice that as I attacked and killed this little guy, that circle on the top left is filled up ever so slightly. Throughout playing the game, you notice, you learn that this is a sort of gauge or a sort of strength ability gauge that you have. In terms of other conventions, because this is a 2D game, a 2D platforming exploration game, you'll notice that jumping is a key thing, or moving around this room. That's a big dude that I can't fight while stalking. There's another one right here. So platforms are a key part of platformers. Funny that. These RPG platformer games, these 2D side-scrolling platformer games. See if I can fight this guy. There are various mechanics within the game to make it more than just a simple platformer. These guys are more difficult to kill than your average sort of Mario or other 2D side-scrolling games. Oh, notice I'm almost dead here. I think there's some way to heal, I just don't really remember how. Oh, there we go. Oops. Anyway, I should stop playing, and we'll move on to our next game and look for other conventions or usual thing. The way things are usually done in that genre of game. Alright, we're back in the realm of third-person games, and looking at conventions again. This game is called Overlord, or Overlord 2. It's quite an old game. It's from the early 2000s, I believe. But let's have a look at what conventions we can see. Once again, starting with the UI, or user interface, I can see 3 primary things. I can see in the top left, and you actually notice that the health has changed in every single game, apart from this one in Hollow Knight. There is my health and some blue line, which we can guess is shield, but in this case it's actually magic. In the bottom left, I can see a mini-map, a bit of a staple of the gaming system. Anything that requires you to traverse more complex maps, where it's not as obvious as to where you need to go. In the top right, I can see there's 39 out of 39, and that's actually representing all of these little goblin guys around me. They are the icons up on the top. These are effectively my tools, or what sets this game apart. I can use them to help me perform tasks. So this game is a third person. As you can see, my overlord, or my character, is in the middle of the screen, is in his entirety. Third person action puzzle adventure game. There are a lot of puzzles in this game that require the use of these creatures. Primarily though, this is an RPG, a role-playing game. You're playing the role of this overlord person to effectively overthrow the realm. We'll quickly have a look at doing something in this game. If there's anything to do, I believe there should be some sort of thing to fight somewhere. Oh, here we go. There's a barrel anyway. We'll send these. As you see, it requires a certain amount of creatures. I can send those to go and perform an action. Very, very basic puzzle here. I just need to have the required resource, in this case, the 4 creatures, and send them out. Now, that's what sets this game apart, the use of these goblins or these minions to perform all these tasks. And it's not really the conventional way of doing things. I can control them as an entirety. But conventionally, the keys are the same. I am using WASD to move. The arrow keys do not work, solely WASD. This game doesn't have the ability to jump. And because the primary function in this game, instead of being able to attack, is actually to control your creatures, that is what the left click does instead of attacking. Attacking is dedicated to the space key in this game. And easily accessible still, but not primary function of this game. Right click recalls your creatures. So, we've had a look at a few different games here, and conventions, or the way they play within the genre, how they meet those genres, like this game, the keys that they use, what you can actually do and how you can do them in those games, and what is outside of the genre, or what makes these games special. We've had a look at user interfaces and what they look like on the screens, and how only the key information is told to us as a player. What you need to go away and do now is to go through the exercises available to you, looking at a range of genres. Remember, genres are the overarching sort of set of games, like first-person shooters, or third-person puzzle games, or card games. Look at both the conventions, what would you expect to see in those games, and more specifically, what user interface would you expect to see in these games. What we're going to be doing throughout the week is making a simple platformer game, similar to Hollow Knight, this third game that we looked at today, and going from there. See you later.